Okay, so I've gone ahead and rough cut and rough filed in the dark blue wax because I don't want to do too much work in these because I don't really need to practice a whole lot. So I went ahead and I'm going to finish out in the dark blue wax. At this point, you may be still practicing in the light blue wax. Don't get mixed up. So I've rough cut these and rough filed, and the next thing I have to do is finish the inside of this ring. The reason we do all this finishing now is because when we start to thin things out on the outside, it's going to be very difficult to polish the inside of this without breaking the ring. We're not going to leave this huge chunky ring here in the end. So once you've rough filed, you want to move on to a finer file. If this is the finest file you have, then you may end up using a needle file from your kit to finish filing and getting it smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and do a finer file on the inside. Let's see if this is finer what I've been using. It'll take a little bit longer than that big file I had, but it'll still work. And then I'm going to go, I think I'm going to start now with this finer file. And I'm just now, at this point before I start filing, I want to make sure this is pretty good circle before I start finishing, because now at this point I'm just trying to really put a little bit of a bevel on this inside edge and make sure everything looks pretty, but I'm also trying to get out all those tool marks from my previous file. And just like with metal, we're going to go from tool marks from a saw to tool marks from a pretty coarse file to a finer file, and then we're going to go to sandpaper. So that's filed enough with my file there, I think. I like the way that looks pretty much right. And it's still a little bit, kind of funky in there still, but it's pretty much the right shape. At this point, I got it pretty much the right shape and the right size. It's a little bit, just short of where I'm looking for, and that's a good place to be when I start going into sandpaper. So, just like with our previous pieces, we're going to use sandpaper in order, 280, 400, 600, 800, just like you would with metal, and we are going to polish the wax all the way up to a polish. So for the inside of the ring, I like to roll a piece of wax up, or sandpaper up, and use that rounded surface to really start now finalizing my shape and getting out all those tool marks. I'm going to work from both sides. And it takes a little bit of time, but not a ton. It's not like with metal where you're just going to be sanding and sanding and sanding forever. So let me get through here, polish this inside up with this 280 sandpaper right now. And once I get this pretty good, then I'm going to move on to my 400 grit. This one's usually the one that takes the most amount of time because it's got to take out some pretty big tool marks. Another little trick I do when I'm doing this is I'll take a long piece of my sandpaper and roll it up in a nice tight little coil, and then it becomes a nice, almost like a sanding stick. Roll this up in a nice tight coil. So now I've got this big round like sanding rod that I can use to clean up the inside of this, and that makes this go really fast. Flip it around. And you can do this with all your grits of sandpaper to speed up this process quite a bit. Let's see here if I can need any more. This is looking to me like I might be at the point where I've just got sandpaper marks from my 220 or 280, but sometimes I go into the next step and I find that I still have sandpaper marks left over, and that's okay. I'll just switch back if I have to. So I'm looking for some 400. And the 400, I'm going to do that same thing again where I roll it up into a tight little coil and make me a nice sanding rod that is the right shape for the inside of my ring. Now I'm going to work that 400 for a little bit. You notice I go at like an angle that's kind of outward like this, because what that'll do is put a little bevel on the inside of the ring and make it more comfortable to wear. I don't just go straight back and forth and try to have a straight wall on the inside of the ring. It's nice to have a little bevel on the inside of the ring. Going right through that 400 pretty quick. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. You'll see it's starting to look pretty smooth on the inside here now. I've got through 400 grit. And we'll go ahead and go to 800 next, or 600. Just rolling this piece of sandpaper up over here. It's being a little bit ornery. It'll smooth out soon enough, just as it always does. There we go. Once you roll it up tight enough, it'll get nice and tight, give you a nice little coil. Nice little sanding rod there. You just work all the way around, just trying to get a nice, smooth, pretty circle. Nothing too exciting here, but it does get shinier. Looking pretty smooth there. Gotta work it in the middle a little bit just in case I'm missing that. That looks pretty good. I don't see any old marks. Oh, there's one I missed. I got that one. Alright, so then just one more grit left. I'm going to roll this one up too because I didn't have them pre-rolled. Roll this one up as well. And then we'll go through that one. Get this one nice and clean. At this point, this is smoothed out just like metal would be up to 800 grit. And that is almost a high polish, right? But we know that that's not quite a polish. And if we want to further this and get it even shinier, which we should, before we send it off to cast, we're going to have to now move to like fabrics to finish the inside. And one of the fabrics I like to use is not sitting here. So I'll come back to fabrics next.